Today on AllTheMons, I want to get myself the perfect catching Pokemon. We tried to get my favourite Pokemon Beldum last episode, and both times it did not go well. Oh, you're actually joking. You're actually joking. So today we need a new Mon that's going to help us out greatly when it comes to capturing these wild Pokemon. And that Pokemon is Gallade, who can learn 2 moves that will help us out greatly. So welcome back to AllTheMons. Welcome back to AllTheMons. We need to get ourselves a catching Mon. And what I mean by that is a Mon that knows a couple of moves. Number 1 is a status move. Something like hypnosis on our Ghastly that's going to make them fall asleep. And to be fair, Ghastly would be good, but we need a second move that's going to lower their health without killing them. And one of those moves that can do that is the false swipe move. It's a restrained attack that prevents the target from fainting. The target's left with at least 1 HP. And we could give this move to one of the Pokemon. However, I would like to get a dedicated catching Mon. And that dedicated catching Mon requires us to get a Ralts. Now, Ralts is a bit of an interesting one. It's actually a rare spawn in a couple of biomes. This blooming plateau over here, I marked out a little spot round here. If I look at the Pokenav, you'll see it's a 0.11% chance. It's a rare chance in this blooming plateau biome, as well as a couple of interesting ones like Eevee, and I think that's the Lucario pre-evolution, so that would be good. But the question you're asking is, how do we make this actually spawn? Now, we could do what I've been previously doing, which is just trying to make all of the Mons despawn in an area by going so high up and then falling down into that area, which would work, but we'd be here for hours. And so what I'm going to be doing instead is working on Pokesnacks. It basically allows you to add baits and it will spawn in Mons based on those baits. This is the base ingredients you're going to need to actually make the Pokesnack. That's honey bottles, Vivichoke, hearty grains, and milk buckets, or any other kind of milk. And then you add your ingredients up here. And each of these different berries allow you to add different types of things, so you can attract specific EV Pokemon, specific type Pokemon. You could add things like golden apples, which would actually increase your shiny chance, as well as reducing bite time, and boosting rarity buckets. And the way that you get them is obviously with gold blocks. Now, we have quite a fair few gold blocks, over 1,000. So I think we might try this method here. However, I also want to increase the chance for psychic types. Ralts is a psychic Pokemon, and so I can add a psychic type berry here, the Piappa berry, to give it a 10x chance for psychic types. Luckily, if I type in berry, I've already got quite a few berries, including that Piappa berry that I wanted. Now, I have made a small little room, I'm going to expand this later on, with a bunch of different berries here, including the Vivichokes over on this side over here. We got a load of Vivichoke seeds from our pickup farm a while ago, and I've just been harvesting these off camera. And then the hearty grains you can find out in the wild. They grow in water, but when you actually grow them yourself, you don't need to grow them in water, and they'll look like that, poking their heads out of the water. So you can harvest them like this, and you'll get yourself the hearty grains, and then you can literally just plant them like a regular wheat seed. I've just been using a Propagate AoE Grow Harvest to grab a little bit of these. We'll sort out an automated farm later on. But some of these, like the hearty grains, I don't think you can actually use botany pots for. So this might be the best way to actually get them. As for honey, we haven't actually got started on a honey farm. But we've managed to kill a few comb bees, which gave us the honey bottles and honeycombs. So I'm thinking temporarily it would be good to get something that can give us a good supply of this honey. And one of the ways that we could do that is by doing productive bees or mystical agriculture for honey seeds. Honey seeds will give you honey essence, and you can turn that into honey bottles, honey blocks, or even honeycomb. All of these will be used later on for productive bees, so I'd like to get my hands on this. The way that we get that is from honey agglomeratio, which is 2 honeycomb and 2 honey bottles to make one of these honey items, and we need 4 in total to make that seed. So I think we're going to have to go hunting for a couple of comb bees. If I go back to spawn, yeah, there's a bunch flying around here, so I'm just going to go and grab as many as I can, hopefully grab some of the honey bottles that they drop, and before too long, we should end up with 4 of these. We've got 3 right now. Hey, perfect. Right, that is enough to make those 4 honey agglomeratios. So what else do we need to actually make this? We need Prudentium essence. Now, I've done a little bit of off-camera mystical agriculture. You start off with Inferium essence, and then you work your way up to Prudentium using an infusion crystal, and then from there, you can upgrade that into the Tertium, then Imperium, and then finally Supremium. There is also Insanium, but that will be a little bit later. Now, this infusion crystal only has 500 uses. It's quite cheap to make like that, but it only has the 500 uses. There is also the Master Infusion Crystal, which requires the Supremium, and that has unlimited uses. So I worked on getting that Master Infusion Crystal off camera to make this a little bit easier. The good thing with the Master Infusion Crystal as well is that you can actually use the block versions of this to get Prudentium blocks, etc. So this will actually be a lot quicker to get the essence that we need using the Master Infusion Crystal like that. So we need 4 of them. We also need to make ourselves the Prosperity Seed Base, and then we need to get an Infusion Altar and 8 Infusion Pillars, which requires a lot of red wool. I think 9 in total. We'll make the altar, and then we'll make the rest of those pillars. Now, it'd probably be good to set up somewhere permanent, so chances are I think the Planarium will be the best place for this. If I plonk down the Infusion Altar like that, it will highlight the areas where I need to place these pedestals in, like that. And then we just need to get all of our essence and place them in the pedestals, all 4, then the honey, and then lastly, right-click with the seed base, like so. And then we just need to give this a redstone signal. So I'm going to quickly go back, grab ourselves a lever, and I'll plonk this right on the side, just like so. And that will turn into a honey seed. Perfect. I think I'm going to go for a hydroponic bed farm later on, but right now our main objective is to get that Ralts. And so I put our newly found honey seeds into a botany pot instead. And then I think we need to get a specific type of farmland for this to grow. My guess would be the Prudentium farmland, but we had enough resources to make the Supremium one, so I did that one instead. So if I place that inside, yeah, we get 35 growth speed, so that should be quite good. And we got our first honey essence in no time. And there we go. That gave us some honey essence there that we can then use to make all of the honey bottles that we need. Now, we can actually speed this up. Normally, I don't think you can actually bone meal these crops, but if you put them in a hopper botany pot, you can grow them up a lot quicker just by right-clicking them with bone meal. So we've got ourselves the honey bottles, the vivichoke, and the hearty grains. We just need the milk. And there's a couple of ways to get this. We could go with the milk buckets, but I want to try out the moo moo milk that you see here. We can get that from using a mill tank, and we've also got our shiny mill tank, so let me see how this works. I'll grab myself some glass bottles and we'll throw out mill tank like so. And I believe if I just right click, change held item to, okay, right, so if I give it a glass bottle, I can then right click it and that will turn all of my glass bottles into moo moo milk. The good thing about the moo moo milk is it is also stackable to 16, which is really, really handy. I think that's perfect. Right, we'll put him away. Put him away? I'm sorry? What kind of milk are we making here, man? And I'll grab myself another one of these campfire pots. We'll grab a green one for now. So what I'm going to do is place down my campfire. I'll do this one outside over here. Place our campfire pot on top of it like so. And we'll add in our recipe like that. We'll put all of the hearty grains down there, the vivichoke on top, and the moo moo milk like that. And I'm going to leave the lid off, because we still need to add our seasoning. And the seasoning that I'm going to go for is one of those piappa berries, the 10 times psychic type. And then I think I'll just add 2 of the enchanted gold apples, like so, and pop them in. So if I open up the pot, whack that in, and whack in the 2 golden apples, and there we go. So we get a 10 times chance for psychic types, a reduced bite time 100%, we boost the rarity bucket, meaning we have a higher chance of getting ultra rares and rares, and a 19 times shiny chance. I can't imagine we'll be getting a shiny, but that would be really cool if we did. And then I'll just close the lid, and that will craft up both of those snacks. Perfect. Oh no, sorry, ignore me. It will craft up one of those snacks because we have to add the seasoning again. But that is fine. We'll take that one poker snack. It does take a little bit of time, but a mon will spawn, and it will eat a chunk of this snack. So I'm going to wait around until we get one of those bites. And I will warn you now, this does take a lot of time, but luckily we got our first one within a couple of minutes. You're joking, we got it first time. So it took a bite out of this cake, we got a Ralts, that is absolutely insane. I actually moved it using a cardboard box. I do just want to catch this guy quite quickly. Oh my goodness, mate, calm down. Right, hopefully a quick ball will do it. And I want to know, I'm hoping that we got a male one. The problem is my minimap's covering that one. Let's see, what gender was this guy? He is... It's a bloke. That means that we can actually turn him straight into a Gallade. Now, if you are looking to get yourself a male Ralts, they are a little bit rarer. I'll show off a method later on that will help you out a ton. I left this here for a little bit longer to see if we'd get any other ultra rares or rare Pokemon. First up was a Gibble. We already got one last episode, but we have another one. So maybe this one has some better IVs. We then got a Chikorita, which is an ultra rare spawn. One of the starters from, I'm not entirely sure it's either Johto or Kanto, I can't remember. And then a Comfey, or a Comfey, I don't know how you pronounce it. But that was also a rare spawn. So I've currently got the Ralts in my party, but what I'm going to do is give them the level up candies, because I like to try and get them to a higher level, probably to the max level that we can actually do, which is about 43. There we go, to 41, maybe one more, yep, 43, perfect. So what I want to do with Ralts is first of all evolve them into a Kirlia. Perfect. And then you'll see, if I try to evolve them now, they'll turn into a Gardevoir. However, if they're a male, I can right-click with a Dawnstone and evolve them into a Gallade. Now, if you have a female Ralts, you can use the Transmutation Orb. It does require a Moonstone, but that will actually switch your CobbleMons gender, and so you could try and get a Gallade that way. Either way, let's get them. Awesome. That is Gallade. Now, Gallade can learn Hypnosis, we've got that there, but they can also learn the False Swipe ability down here, which will be really handy. And in fact, I've just heard something else spawn. Ah, another Ralts. Right, let's test out Gallade with Ralts. So what we're going to do is Hypnosis first. That will put them on to sleep, and then we'll hit them with a False Swipe. Like so, that will put them to 1 HP, and then lastly, we can finish them off with an Ultra Ball, and that should be a very easy catch. It was a lucky catch. And there we go. We've now got ourselves another Ralts. Not only that, but Gallade is actually quite a decent Pokemon themselves. They have a ability here that powers up slicing moves. And there are a bunch of slicing moves here. Now, I'm not sure what is specifically a slicing move. If I had to guess, it would be probably moves like Sacred Sword or Night Slash, Leaf Blade, things like this. So I'm not entirely sure, but it's a very good mon nonetheless. Right, well now that we've got Gallade, I am actually going to cardboard box up the rest of this Pokesnack. I don't want to use it all. And we'll take this over to the end. I then place the rest of the Pokesnack down in the end, and within a few minutes we managed to get ourselves a Beldum spawn. However, I didn't know how long this is going to take, so I was eating in the middle of this. Got another Beldum. After a few false swipes getting it down to 15% health, I then used Hypnosis and tried to capture it using Ultra Balls. Oh, right, it's sleeping. Okay, come on. A few attempts later, and we finally caught it. Oh, we got him! Oh, that's amazing. That's so sick. Right, and what the hell is this? Eligem. Yep. Right, we'll try and capture this guy. I don't know what he is, but he looks cool. He wasn't even in the ultra rare list. Maybe he's common? Oh, he's in the uncommon. I stayed here until the Pokesnack was run out, and we managed to get another Beldum as well. Hey, nice. A second Beldum. Let's pop away this guy, and then we should be able to evolve Beldum into Matang, who has a load more moves now. Ooh, nice. We've got Flash Cannon here, which is a crazy move. Zen Headbutt, that's nice. And I reckon we'll put Metal Claw on it. Now, I think Matang has a ridiculously high level to actually evolve, but that will be one of my favourite party members. I absolutely love Metagross. It's my favourite Pokemon. So, what do I want to get into next? Well, I would love to get my hands on the Time Wand from JustDireThings. This requires the Blaze Gold that we got before, as well as the Ferrocore, but it requires Time Crystal. And Time Crystal is an interesting one, because the way that you get that is by getting a budding Time Crystal block from spreading Shadow Pulse Goo onto budding Amethyst. Now, last time we were playing with JustDireThings, we got up to the Blaze Bloom Goo, but finally we're actually able to get the Void Shimmer Goo, because now that we have access to the end, we can get Dragon's Breath. However, I did find a quest here called the Halitosis Generator, and this generator itself requires you go through a lot of the Iron Furnaces quest, so we might as well do this. And then when you get this quest done, you'll actually get Dragon's Breath. So you can get Dragon's Breath before you actually go to the end, a little tip and trick. Anyway, now that we've got that, we've got the Dragon's Breath, we can upgrade our goo to the Void Shimmer tier, and then we can upgrade it one level further if we get access to Echo Shards. There are a few ways of getting that, one of which is by getting Warden predictions. So I'll grab myself a model framework. We've already got the Deep Learner in our backpack. And we crafted a spell last episode called the Obsidian Railgun. So I'm hoping that if I go over to the ancient city, I should be able to summon in a Warden and actually get ourselves the prediction. Once I do this one, he should spawn in. I've got to be very careful and very quick. Yep, spawned in. Grab that. Get the data prediction model. Pop it in my deep learner. Pop that in my curio slot. Obsidian railgun, and I should be able to just one-hit him. Ooh. No? Turns out the Warden is quite a tanky guy. It took quite a few shots to actually kill the Warden, and to get our basic prediction, we had to do this 6 times. Now luckily, the Warden does drop echo shards when you kill it, so we ended up with a decent supply of these before we even popped them in the simulation chamber. And 5 more kills later, we had completed it. Great, that is all of the 6 kills that we needed to get ourselves some more echo shards. So I will pinch that deep learner, take the model right out, go back home, grab myself a stack of prediction matrices. I'll then plonk them inside with the Warden data model. We should end up with a couple more Warden predictions, which we can then get echo shards from. Either way, for now, we have 6, so that does mean we can upgrade to that Shadow Pulse goo, which is fantastic. Now, that tier allows us to get Celesta Gem, which is really nice, but we also get access to Eclipse Alloy. Eclipse Alloy is a really nice material. We can make a Paxel, and that allows you to mine unobtainium, all the modium, all of those things using that Paxel, so it would be really good to get our hands on that at some point. In fact, let's grab a little bit of that and Celesta Gem right now. We'll do 3 of each. I think that should be okay. So I'll place down my block of netherite and the Shadow Pulse goo there, and encase it with the rest of those blocks. And you'll see on the little icon, we can either power it using Skulk or Skulk Catalyst. And obviously, Skulk is a lot easier to come by than the Catalyst. So we'll right-click that, and that will infect all of those blocks. And that's all cooked up. I'm going to make sure to grab all of that, and then we will smelt that up like so. Oh, and we don't need the Celeste Gem smelted up. That shouldn't have smelted. Yeah, we still get the Celeste Gem. Perfect. But more importantly, we can now get access to that budding time crystal block. For that, we need the budding amethyst, and I've done a little bit of off-camera work to help us out. If I go down all the way into where I place my apricorn farm, I've done this out a little bit and made it look a little bit more cozy. It's very, very nice. I am a big fan of how I've done this. I've actually added this side room over here off-camera with an amethyst golem from Ars Nouveau. And this is pretty cool. Basically, we've got a compacting drawer here where this guy is set as his home. And he will harvest this wall of amethyst and basically just place it inside this compacting drawer, giving us amethyst blocks and amethyst shards. The cool thing about this little fella is that he will actually generate budding amethyst blocks. So I'm going to pinch these ones over here, all 4 of these. And he'll actually generate budding amethyst if I place those blocks of amethyst like so. For this demo, I'm actually going to grab a Dominion wand and just quickly pop his clogs. If I place him down like so, and then set his home onto there, you'll see he'll actually start converting these blocks here into budding amethyst. He's going to do a little dance, and then once he's done his dance, there you go. So he's just converted that into a budding amethyst block. So that is one renewable way of getting those budding amethyst blocks. For now, I'm going to go upstairs and plonk down our Shadow Pulse goo, as well as cardboard boxes here filled with budding amethyst. I'll then right-click this middle block with the Shadow Pulse goo, and that will infect all of these blocks, becoming time crystal blocks. Perfect. And these have a really interesting effect. They need to be charged by appearing in every single dimension, the overworld, the nether, and the end. And right now they're charging with overworld energy, which is when they turn blue. To speed this up, we can actually use the growth accelerators from Applied Logistics. And we'll give them some power by putting the crystal resonance generators on top. If I place them on either side of this block, and then give this power, you'll see very quickly that charges up. And what I'll also do is the exact same on this side right here, adding some more crystal resonance generators on like so, which will also convert this one, and then I'll take back that Shadow Pulse goo. Now, what I'm going to do here is actually craft a cut-paste gadget. We're not going to be doing an automatic version of this just yet. Normally in JustDireThings, if you want to automate this process, what you can do is get yourself the swappers. The simple swapper here will just do 1 block, or you can get the advanced swapper, which requires that Eclipse alloy earlier. And that will allow you to swap an entire area. But if you want to do it the way that I'm currently doing it, what I'm going to do is right-click here, shift right-click up here, and we're going to actually just cut this away and that will store it inside this cut paste gadget. I can then grab the anchor, I can then go in the settings menu and up this by a single block like so, and place it back down. And that way I've now got a little structure that I can move around to actually make sure that these blocks get charged in all dimensions. So we'll go and do that. I will collect all of this. We will press cut. I've set a little waystone here just to make this easier, and what I'm going to do is just place down, moving this up by a block, place down all of these, and they should convert into the nether variant, which I believe is orange. Yep, perfect. And then we'll go back into cut mode, select the exact same region like so, cut it out, and head to the end, and paste it down once again. And that will convert it into its final form, the green form. And these will actually generate the time crystals. Eventually, they're going to run out of juice. And you'll see this one has run out of juice here. These two are still going. So I'm going to make sure to harvest the time crystal clusters. Now, you want to kind of get rid of these as soon as you get them, because you'll notice yourself getting speed effects. Yeah, there we go. So right now I just got a random slowness 6 effect, which is crazy. So what you want to do is pop them in your backpack or put them in your AE system, something like that. And that will remove any of the negative effects you get. Right, so these are now all diminished. They're all back to their original form. So what I want to do is literally just grab this entire structure once again in cut mode, like that, and cut that out and bring it back to the overworld to restart that entire process. Right, so that will then turn them all back into the blue version, do the exact same process here again, like that, and plonk that down over here, where that will fully charge them and produce even more of those time crystals. So in total, after 2 rounds of that, we've got 27 time crystals. I'm just going to leave this setup here for now until we start automating it a little bit later. So now I've got all of that, let's craft ourselves the time wand, and then we need to fill it with time fluid. The way that we get time fluid is by throwing a time crystal into polymorphic fluid, which we get from throwing polymorphic catalyst into water, and we get that from blaze gold and nether wart. So let's grab ourselves 8 of this polymorphic catalyst, and we'll pop outside just over here, and we'll throw that all in like so. Grab ourselves our time crystals and throw all of them in like so, and then we just right click with the wand to pick all of that time fluid back up into the wand, and there we go. 8 time fluid buckets now put inside there. The time wand is super useful. It allows us to basically tick accelerate any kind of tile entity. So if I go up into my power room here, I can actually tick accelerate all of these blocks. It doesn't work with the advanced AE stuff. I'm not entirely sure why. But mechanism, all of this stuff, the enriching factory, hostile neural networks, that works. In fact, we can try it out now by just speeding up all of this. And let's add some prediction matrices, and you can see how fast this will actually run now that we've tick accelerated it. Pull all of that out. Check how quick that is. We can even bump that up all the way up to 128 times. Check how quick that goes. It drains our energy incredibly fast. Later on when we're doing bees, that is ridiculously useful. So expect to see a lot more of this time wand. Another thing that I did off camera was actually create ourselves a colour applicator. The colour applicator allows us to colour any kind of ME cable. If I place down an ME chest here, I can actually place the colour applicator in as a disk drive and show you what's inside. I basically put a bunch of these paintballs in. The way that you make paintballs is by using matter balls and then any kind of dye. So I generated quite a few of the dyes that we tend to use, and I placed them inside the colour applicator. And then for me to use this, I need to go downstairs, and I can basically hold shift and use my mouse wheel to change the colour. So let's choose lime, and I can right click these and change the colour of all of the cables that I want. And it will use only one of those paintballs every time I do an operation. So if you remember, I had all of these cables here with cable anchors and all of this wacky stuff over here. What I'm going to do now is actually strip this all back, and we're going to change the colour of these cables so that they don't connect to each other. So this line here will be orange, and then we'll have another line coming out of here like so, which I will colour a different colour. We'll go with green for now. I'll just right click all of these, and then we'll add the cable anchor there and there, which means that we've now separated those two lines a lot neater than what we had before. And now I've freed up a couple of channels here, one of the first things that I want to do is get into Industrial Foregoing. So that means we'll need a few things. We first need to get ourselves a couple of fluid extractors. And what I'll do is actually encode these recipes in our auto crafting system. and we'll get 4 of these fluid extractors for now. Fluid extractors allow you to extract latex from logs. Different logs allow you to extract different amounts of latex, with acacia and mangrove logs outputting the most. But do note that the logs will be consumed during this process. Powering the extractor will triple its output, and we can also add in Industrial Foregoing add-ons to speed this up further. But for now, I made a little setup where I've got 4 extractors pointing into one log to generate us quite a bit of latex to start with. I powered this up using flux points and then piped all of the latex into a latex processing unit. This can be fed with water and latex to produce dry plastic, and the dry plastic can be smelted into actual plastic, which we can use for industrial foregoing crafts. Now that entire process is incredibly slow. I would recommend, if you've got into productive bees, to get your hands on the plastic bee. It will actually produce you plastic combs, which can be centrifuged down into plastic and latex. It's a lot quicker. But for now, we might as well take advantage of the time one that we've got and generate us loads of this plastic and latex. Now that we've got that all set up, we want to make a dissolution chamber. That requires a diamond gear and one of the machine frames that we made earlier. Perfect. And I'm actually going to set up a pattern processor on this dissolution chamber. We'll place it in like that, like so. And if we wanted to power this dissolution chamber, we'd have to bring a cable line over here. However, I think it would be worth getting into flux accessors and applied flux. That will allow us to power our machines using pattern providers so that we can keep this all on one cable. Now we're going to be required to make a few things for this. Number 1 is going to be the induction cards. These are made with flux accessors, and these are made with a new type of processor, energy processors. So how do we get those energy processors? Well, we need to add this recipe here, and we need to get printed energy circuits. Those come from circuit slicing charged redstone crystal blocks, and we get those by combining a bunch of these charged redstone crystals. The charged redstone crystals come from the reaction chamber with just regular redstone crystals with a bit of water and then a bunch of energy to make them charged. And we get the redstone crystals, finally, from this recipe here. Blocks of redstone, glowstone, and flux crystal. There we go. What an involved recipe. So I put all of those things in their correct recipes. Let's make 64 of them. Luckily, the crafting process doesn't take too long at all. So after you've made it, it's not that bad. So let's encode the flux accessor, and then we'll also encode induction cards and add them to the molecular assemblers. So, how do we actually use this? Well, you can create yourself a storage cell, an FE storage cell, and this works exactly the same as a battery. The problem is that these store a ridiculous amount of energy. For example, this 1k ME storage cell actually stores over 1 billion FE, which is absolutely ridiculous. So a lot of people probably won't be able to afford this straight away. And if that's the case, my recommendation is to actually make a storage bus and pop it onto any kind of battery storage. So here as an example, I've got the Elite Energy Cube, and I can actually pop a storage bus on the side like so, partition it to be FE, and if I look at my ME interface, I can actually see the FE stored here. And that way I can then bring out a line here and add flux accessors, which will actually power my machines if I had them over here, using our Elite Energy Cube as the storage. Right now we're generating enough FE to keep up with the system, and so I actually crafted that 1k FE storage cell instead. So now that we've done that, we should be able to make ourselves that 1k FE storage cell. Perfect. And I'll pop that into our disk drive. So I've placed down the FE storage cell, but we need to somehow still fill this up. And the way that I'm going to do that is by having a flux accessor. What I tend to do is grab myself another flux point here, exactly the same as this one, but I set the priority to -1. I then place down the flux accessor and then pop that flux point on top, and it will drain all of that energy, but it won't choke and starve out this system here. So if I go back to that energy cell, we should see that topping up the ME drive. Great, that's working a treat. So now that we've got all the energy stored inside the cells, what can we do? Well, we can actually power our machines using pattern providers. If I open up the pattern provider, there's a slot in here, and one of the upgrades I can add is an induction card. Now, we made that recipe earlier. I'm going to craft 16 of these guys, and if I take one of these and pop it inside there, it will actually use the FE and charge up any machine that's connected to that pattern provider, meaning we don't have to have this cable set up here. We can literally just power it through the ME cable and the pattern providers directly into the the chamber, like so. And the pattern provider still works as a regular pattern provider. So let's add a few dissolution chamber recipes. One of the first things that I tend to add are the add-ons for efficiency, processing, and speed. Those are crafted like so. You need diamond gears, sugar, glass panes, redstone, and then latex, but in that liquid form and not the plastic form. And one of the big things to note is that if you encode this recipe, you have to make sure you're using the correct gears. This is using the Industrial Foregoing gears. That's wrong. What we need to use is the all the ores gears. So my advice is to actually encode the gears first, place them in your molecular assembler, and then once you've done that, encode your processing upgrades, because that will then use your auto-crafted version. And that looks good to me. Whilst I'm here, I'm also going to grab myself a infinity cobblestone cell, because certain recipes that we've been making, such as this furnace, could really be done with cobblestone. I'd prefer it to be done with cobblestone. So what I've done is I've crafted that infinity cell. If I add it into my ME drive like so, our machine is now filled with cobblestone. We can literally take and drop cobblestone into the system, and then we can re-encode the furnace with cobblestone like so. For now, I'm going to craft a basic fluid tank and make sure that this is actually pushing to the top, so that this fluid tank is filling up with latex, and I'm going to time wand it so that we can get a little bit of latex to start our upgrades. Right, I've generated quite a little bit of this latex. I'm going to pick up that tank, and I'm going to place this on my network with a storage bus. All because this is temporary, I'm going to make sure to partition that storage as well. So we've just taken out the latex. And I'm going to add the recipes for all of those tier 2 upgrades. These ones here that I showed earlier, I've added all of those as crafting recipes. So I can plonk them in. I'll go into the dissolution chamber and set the output to push at the bottom, meaning that once it's crafted, it will now push downwards. So let's try and craft one of each of these upgrades. That is the first one crafting up. And you'll see it's still getting power through the induction card provided by that pattern provider. Really, really handy. Great, that is both of those crafted up. Let's get that final processing tier 2 add-on completed. And that is done as well. I'm going to add all of these upgrades to the dissolution chamber so that that will actually speed up the crafting of all of the items that we're going to be doing. Right, so now that we've got those upgrades, I'm actually going to try and craft another set of them, and they should be significantly quicker. Yeah, look at that. They process just so much quicker now they've got that. So the last couple of things that I want to do this episode is sort out our latex production and some pink slime. I've got a 256k ME fluid storage cell. You just use copper instead of iron to make that. And I partitioned it with latex and pink slime. I've also used the overflow destruction and equal distribution card. I tend to always partition my fluid storage cell just to make sure that we're not going to be inputting random conspicuous liquids in our AE system. So if you ever want to store anything new, for example, like honey, we would just drag that in like so, and then we'd be able to store it. So I'll take that out for now and place that in my ME disk drive. And what I'm going to do right now is a temporary setup to get latex. I mentioned it before, we're going to be getting into bees shortly, so I don't want to make a massive setup for it all to be undone by one whole episode. So what I'm going to do is place down a fluid extractor. We're going to give this some power, and then I am just going to simply place some add-ons inside it and a spruce log over here. That will produce latex. And I've got an import bus just over here that will be importing that directly into our system. Now, I believe it doesn't seem to... Oh, it is. So there we go. That is now importing it. Now, I'm going to time wand the living heck out of this so that we're importing as much as possible into that fluid cell. That is pretty crazy. We also want to get ourselves pink slime. I've done a little bit off camera, but I will show you how I do this. To get pink slime, we need to use the mob slaughter factory. The recipe is really easy, like this. And I've also crafted up an add-on upgrade, the emerald add-on. It is the highest range tier add-on. There's a load of different ones going from +1 all the way up to +12, which is the maximum size. And so I've taken that and I've gone down into my mob farm. I've cleaned this up a little bit and I've actually done a couple of different additions to this. Number one, I've hooked this up to a wireless connector. I've put storage buses on both the barrel and the experience holder. So I can actually access all of our items from the netherite barrel through my AE terminal. So I can see all of my slime balls there. And I've just set this storage bus to be on extract only, so we can only take out of this barrel and not add to it. I was also playing around with capacity cards and partitioning, but I think this is just a better method. And on the experience holder, I've got that set up with a storage bus. I partitioned it to be just the XP fluid, and I can actually see that in my system here. That's actually used for a couple of crafts in the Dissolution chamber a little bit later on. So we made the tier 2 add-ons, we actually used pink slime for the tier 3, and then for the tier 4 we actually use that XP fluid, so that's quite useful. And for now, all I'm going to do is pull out a connection over here, grab a mob slaughter factory and place it down like so that the grindy bit is pointing in this direction, and I'm going to put the show working area on it so we can see what effect that range add-on has. So let's pop that in there. Yep, that is covering, well, a huge area, crazy. And then I'll add my speed and processing add-ons as well. Now that setup is actually going to need some power, so what I'm going to do is, I did plan on using an import bus, but what I'm actually going to use is an import-export bus. That's just an import bus, an export bus, and then a logic processor to make that. And what that does is it acts as an import bus, meaning that it will take items and fluid from here, but we can also set it to export something. And if I give it an item with FE and press right click, that will then export that FE to here, which gives it power. Perfect, so that is now up and running. And if I press go on that, we should see a couple of fluids appearing. Number one is liquid meat, and the other one is pink slime. Now this is where partitioning has come in really handy here. We don't want to import the liquid meat into our fluid cell, and so because I partitioned the cell to only accept the pink slime, we're only getting pink slime in our system. You can see it's slowly going up there. I also did something a little bit different here. I have invested in a gem case from Apotheosis. This is really cool. This allows you to store your gems, and I modified my code a little bit to add this first section here, which imports all of the gems and puts them into the gem bench. So if I look inside here, it will actually show every single one of the gems and their rarity values. And we've actually been accumulating quite a lot of really cool gems here. You can take out gems just by clicking, and then you can also put them back in like so. And if you've got some materials, you need some gem dust and you need any kind of rarity material. If you pop those in these slots here, and you have 2 of the same type of gem, you can actually upgrade it. I'm going to have to turn off JEI for a second. It takes 9 gem dust and 9 arcane sands to upgrade 2 of these flawless ones to a perfect breach gem. I think you also need some different types of materials if you want to upgrade different variants. So this cracked one needs time-worn fabric to upgrade, but we can do it with all of these and then upgrade them into that higher tier gem. You might also be wondering why and how we're getting those higher tier ones. Well, actually, if I press Ctrl and T, I unlocked the pinnacle tier before I unlocked Summit. I really don't know why. I thought that you had to do one after the other, but apparently not. I'm not sure whether I messed up something here. But the requirement for that pinnacle tier is that you need to have equipped every single item of epic rarity and killed the dragon. We haven't actually got to the summit tier because we haven't slayed the wither, but apparently we still get access to this. And that gives us access to some of the rarer materials. In fact, if I just turn this off, you'll see some of the items that are coming in here are ridiculous. This one, Looting 9, just appeared, and there's tons of really cool items like this. We'll definitely have to sift some of this later on. I think we have more than enough of this pink slime. We're not going to need much more. We're going to have bees set up later, so I don't want to use too much of this. And now that we have that pink slime, we have a load of different recipes that we get access to in our Dissolution chamber. For example, we can get advanced machine frames, which allow us to make quite a lot of interesting machines, such as the Enchantment Extractor. Ooh. And very soon, we can also get into the ore lasers, the stasis chambers, and material stonework factory. But for now, I've crafted myself an Enchantment Extractor because obviously we've got some of that rare loot. So what I'll do is place down the Enchantment Extractor over here and give it one of those add-ons, and we'll grab maybe a stack of books. I'm sure there's a load of stuff that we've got in our system that's probably got a load of enchantments like this. Mana boost, mana regen, things like efficiency, mending, blast protection. Loads of really nice gear, so I'm going to pull all of these enchantments off. We could use SFM to strip these, but I think this might just be a little bit easier to do. And later on, we can actually duplicate some of these enchantments with things like create printing presses. I think next episode, I'll also get an enchantment library from Apothec Enchanting so that we can store these enchanted books a little bit better and pull them out when we need them. So the final things that I want to do for this episode is upgrade our mage gear. We're currently at the tier 3 gear, and we can do 2 upgrades. We can first upgrade it to the Mancers set. That's the Geomancers, Technomancers, Pyromancers, Ethermancers. They require 2 of the essences, a netherite ingot, and then a mark of mastery. And once we get that, we can actually upgrade straight to all the modium, then vibranium, and then unobtainium. So how do we get that mark of mastery? Well, we need every single one of the essences placed in an enchanting apparatus. We've got most of these covered, but we still need 3. We need the Abjuration, Conjuration, and Anima Essence, both of which we have made before, but the Anima Essence requires Wither Skeleton Skulls. So we're going to have to go and get ourselves some of these. It also requires a Wilden Tribute. And speaking of Wilden Tribute, if I do want to upgrade my Mage's spellbook to that 3rd tier, we also need a Wilden Tribute, and a nether star. So it looks like the final things that we're doing this episode are getting the Wilden tributes and some nether stars. Now, we've done the Wilden summoning before. You just need a vexing archwood and 3 of the Wilden drops, as well as a block of lapis. If you don't have any of those, you can use this recipe, but it's obviously a bit more expensive with the block of emerald. But we will craft up 1 of those. And there's something that I didn't do last time, which I should have. You can actually get a model framework for all of the Wilden drops. So I'm going to grab a model framework ready for that. So without further ado, let's go outside and summon in some Wildens. I'm going to right click with the model framework, pop that in my deep learner, and we'll just get to finishing off all of these guys. Perfect, that's the Wilden summon done. I now have a basic Wilden data model as well. For now, I'm actually going to pop that inside my simulation chamber, as well as a stack of prediction matrices, and just time on that a little bit so we can pace through some of those just for later on when we need to get ourselves some more of these drops. But anyway, we actually managed to get every single one of the drops here: a horn, a wing, and a spike. And we need all 3 of those to actually summon in the Wilden boss. So we actually managed to get the perfect amount that we needed. However, we're still going to need to make another couple of tablets for the summon Warden, so I'm just going to make sure to use some of these predictions to grab some of those other drops. Right, perfect. Let's grab 2 of the summon tablets, and that should be all good to go. I've got some obsidian here, and we're going to use that spell, the obsidian railgun. Now, we could spawn this anywhere. The problem is it will damage the environment. We could do it in the planarium, but I'm currently in the progress of actually kitting it out and making it look nice. Right now, this is a bit garish. It's just stone brick everywhere. But there's a little bit of a spoiler as to what's happening next episode. Ooh. So I think the best place for now would probably be up in the nether. It's a large space, and we're not really too worried about the surroundings, so I think that's actually going to be the best idea. A little bit of a spoiler here, but it was a terrible idea. I'll show you later. I'll pop down my ritual brazier just over here. We'll right-click with the tablet of Summon Wilden, and then we need to throw in 1 of each of those ingredients. And once that's done, we'll right-click it again, and that will spawn in the Wilden boss. Now, this boss has 3 phases that you've got to watch out for, but we'll probably skip a few because we're going to be doing so much damage. So the first phase is just a basic Wilden. He'll summon in all of these guys, and I think I broke him. Okay, no, we've got the second phase here. He grows spikes, and he'll do some extra damage with them. I've got to make sure that it doesn't fall in the lava. And yeah, this is his second attack. He'll basically just fire out a bunch of these Wilden spikes that you've got to dodge. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Oh, no, he did get hit. Whoa, okay, he actually prevents flight. That's crazy. I didn't realise that. There we go. Easy kill. And that should be 1 of the Wilden tributes. So after that kill, I decided that I was going to summon the other one. And this is where I realised that there is a little bit of a problem with summoning this guy in the nether. Oh, So he's fallen into a lava lake, and I don't know what I can do. What the heck? I'm sorry? What attack was that? I then thought that maybe I could salvage this fight, so I tried to get some fire resistance potions, and I made a mob imprisonment tool from Industrial Foregoing using the plastic and gas tiers, but I literally could not move this guy. Oh, right. That doesn't work. Apparently I can't grab him. Honestly, I don't know what to do here. He's just trapped in that lava lake. I can't move him using a mob imprisonment tool, so I'm just going to leave him there. He doesn't seem to be doing anything serious, and he's got a ridiculous amount of resistance and regen, so I can't actually even fight him if I tried. So maybe don't fight this guy in the nether. Maybe just go to the overworld like a, you know, regular human being. I flew out a few hundred blocks from my base and just fought him there, and again, it was a very easy fight. Afterwards, I grabbed a model framework and trained up a wither skeleton model so that we could get some more wither skeleton skulls. I then made the same wither cage that I did in Civilus, but this time I actually trained a model framework based on the wither so that we could generate nether stars later on. And these wither predictions I can take out and actually use them to produce nether stars directly, so we've got an infinite source of nether stars provided that we give this prediction matrices. So with that, I can now upgrade my spellbook to that final tier 3 stage. I can also upgrade it to the AllTheModium stage as well. If I pop the book in here with the smithing template that we got a couple of episodes back and the AllTheModium ingot, and that is really neat because that actually gives me access to 2 more slots in our spellbook. Inside the planarium, I set up the rest of the essences that we had to produce, and once I had picked all 8 of the essences up, we could then craft our marks of mastery. I should be able to go over here where I've got my new enchanting apparatus set up. I put it on the wall this time. It just looks a little bit cooler, so I thought I'd do that. And then I'll plop in all of my essences, like so, with the Wilden tribute in the middle, and that will make us the marks of mastery. It also uses some sauce. I think it used an entire sauce jar there. That's good to know. And then we've got it. 5 marks of mastery. Using 2 air essences, 1 netherite ingot, and the mark of mastery, I upgraded every single one of my armor pieces to the AllTheMons equipment. Awesome, that is the final piece of kit needed for the AllTheMons robe. And we are looking pretty swanky, but we're not going to have this armor for long because we can get straight into all the modium set. I'm going to grab 4 of the templates there, 4 of the ingots as well, and then we'll just pop all of that, all of these in the smithing table and upgrade them to an AllTheMons set. We get 200 extra max mana, 6 mana regen, and 6 spell power. And that's on each one of these pieces of armor. And check out this armor set. I am loving this. It looks really cool. So now we are a full AllTheMons wizard. So if you did enjoy this episode, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you're new around here, and I'll see you next episode for some more AllTheMons. Take care.